curious, have you noticed the recent buzz around freshly milled flour, specifically whole grains that are milled and baked into bread the same day? This recent interest actually reminds me of back in 2020 when there was this rise of sourdough and everyone was trying sourdough. Now that's still popular, but it has died down a little bit. However, I am so thrilled when I see new content or new home bakers getting excited about real bread made with freshly milled flour. I think it's a change we need to make, a really good grassroots movement that will help us all transform our health and bring food control back into our home. In this video, I want to try to open your eyes to the power of freshly milled flour if you're not already aware. I want to do this by not only sharing my personal experience, but also talking you through what we know about whole grains nutritionally and scientifically. When I moved our home baking completely over to baking with freshly milled flour, the health benefits were dramatic and very noticeable, and I wanted to know why. So I dove into the facts, the science, and also listened to a lot of resources of people who have also experienced the same thing. So I just want to get on here, share some of this information with you, and also share my own little testimony about the power of freshly milled flour. This video is part of a little mini series I'm doing here on my Keeper of the Home channel and my Keeper of the Home podcast. If you didn't listen to episode 1, go back and listen to it. We covered the history of wheat, which I think is so important to know what has happened to wheat throughout history and where we're at today and what we can do about it. So definitely go listen to that. But in that episode, I really briefly covered some of the specific health benefits that we experienced when we moved over to making bread and bread products solely with 100% freshly milled whole grain flour. And I really wanted to know why we were seeing these benefits. I have a very curious mind, and I had to consider to myself, are we experiencing these things because of self-fulfilling prophecy? I heard what bread can do, and so we're thinking that we're seeing them when in reality there's not much different. Or was it just like a placebo effect, something that I just thought would happen, so it did? But I actually discovered real scientific information and reasoning for why we were experiencing these really incredible health changes for the better. So I want to kind of go over those benefits we saw, but also dive in a little deeper into why freshly milled flour made all the difference. And it really comes down to the nutrients that are found in the wheat grain. And to talk about all this, it's just really important that we understand what exact nutrients are found in the wheat grain and the parts that make it up. Because once you understand what nutrients are in there, you can actually see what our body does with those nutrients. So if you're not already aware, the wheat grain contains 3 main parts. We got the endosperm, the germ, and the bran. The bran and the germ is actually what contains 20 essential nutrients that our bodies need to sustain life. And when we bake with commercial white flours, that bran and germ has been completely stripped away, and we're just left with the endosperm, which is mainly carbohydrates and starches. And I should have looked this up before I got going, but I have heard, and maybe I'll go and do the research and actually leave that for you in the description, but the essential nutrients that are found in the wheat, there's only a few more that wheat does not contain, and that's things like vitamin D, which we need from the sun, and other nutrients that are found in food items like lentils and beans. So the wheat grain is so comprehensive and sustains us so much, and that is just incredible considering the history of bread and how important bread products have always been to society. So if you're like me, you really want to know exactly what nutrients are found in this wheat. So in my book, my cookbook for yeast breads, it's just this little book that has solely yeast bread recipes. It's 20 of our family's favorites, my go-tos. I use this book a lot. I'm working on a quick breads cookbook, so make sure you're subscribed so that you get the announcement when that book comes out. But this one is all my favorite yeast bread recipes. But in the front of this book, I broke down a chart explaining what nutrients are found in freshly milled flour versus white flour. So let's go over this really briefly just so that you know in your head what nutrients are intact when the bran and germ are intact. Now, of course, wheat has carbohydrates, but most of the carbohydrates are found, like we mentioned, in the endosperm. Now, carbs get a bad rap, but they're actually really important for our energy and for cellular function, so it's important that we get some, and probably the majority of our diet should be healthy carbs. Now, something that you may not be aware of is bread has a lot of protein, and the majority of the protein is found in the bran and the germ. So when you're eating that bread product, especially if you compare it with another protein like peanut butter or dairy products, you get a complete protein structure. So I know the world is really obsessed with getting enough protein in our diets, and bread is a really easy way to do that. Fats are also found in the bran and germ, specifically the germ, because that's where the oils are in the wheat grain. Don't be scared of these fats. Our body and our cells absolutely need these healthy oils and fats for good health. Fiber, this is one of the hugest things that 100% whole wheat contains, and the fiber does so much. There's actually 10 to 12 grams of fiber per serving in bread. If you take that out and only eat the white bread or the endosperm, you've only got about 2 grams of fiber. So it's really important that fiber is a huge part of our diet for a lot of reasons we're going to cover. There's a lot of B vitamins in the bran and the germ. We get thiamine, riboflavin, niacin, and folate, and vitamin B6. B vitamins are so important, and they are found in abundance with the whole grain. Versus if you take just the white flour, they're either non-existent or they have been synthetically created and added into white flour. That's what we call enriched flour. Now, we talked about all this on the history of wheat in our last episode, but I think it's important to note just how different a synthetic form of vitamin is compared to a natural form, which our bodies can absorb and digest so much better. And they are just found in abundance in freshly milled whole grain flour. We get other important minerals like magnesium, iron, zinc, manganese, phosphorus, potassium, selenium. These are, again, found in abundance in natural form. The only one that is synthetically fortified in bread is iron, and iron is so important. And personally, I just don't think that synthetic version does as much good. So it's a great source of iron when you eat freshly milled flour. Other honorable mentions in whole grains are specific enzymes like amylase, lipase, protease, all things I don't know if I'm pronouncing right, but certain enzymes that help with digestion. There's phytonutrients, antioxidants, flavonoids, lots and lots of good stuff that is not found, or it is destroyed when we sift out the bran and germ. So that's a breakdown of the nutrients, but you might be wondering, why can't I just buy whole grain from the store shelves? Like, if it's the whole grain with the bran and the germ, why do we have to freshly mill it in our homes? So let's go over what actually happens as soon as you mill the wheat. You actually have very little time before those nutrients start to oxidize. We've all seen like fruits and vegetables go bad. That's called oxidation. It's when they spoil and lose nutrients and lose their shelf life. That's what real food does. And what's amazing is the wheat won't actually do that until it's milled. And so when you're buying whole wheat flour off the shelf in the store, you actually have no idea how long it's been there, when it was milled. And I can't prove this, but wheat flour should not be shelf stable. So somehow they're taking out a lot of the oils. They may be sifting some of the bran and germ just to make that whole grain flour shelf stable, because the reality is it actually spoils very quickly. So if you're buying whole grains, it should actually smell rancid after about a week. So let's go over the timeline of what happens. And again, I have a little chart here in my book that I'm referring to. So after you mill it, you have like same day or 1 day, and that's your like peak freshness. All the nutrients are still intact and you get the best flavor. If you've never actually eaten bread with freshly milled flour, this is going to blow your mind. And I'm really just surprised at how many people have not. So many of us don't even know what freshly milled flour tastes like. This is a new concept, and that's sad. I think we need to change that. So the same day or 1 day after, you've got like peak freshness, peak nutrients, they're all in there. It hasn't oxidized. You can store it at room temp for the next day. I often just store, mill up a lot to get me through a day or two. I find that easiest since we're making bread products daily. So from 2 to 7 days, there's a slight oxidation in the oils. So you get a minor loss of specifically the vitamin E, because vitamin E is found in the germ. That's the like really healthy oil that's in there. But the flavor's still excellent. You can store it in an airtight container. You can even put it in the fridge or the freezer, and that will help slow down the oxidation process. So if you want to mill up a ton and keep it in your freezer, that's actually a really good option. Now from 1 to 2 weeks, there's a noticeable loss of the B vitamins. And then the flavor begins to dull, and you'll see, or you'll start to smell the oils go a little rancid. So again, if you want to refrigerate it or keep it in the freezer or just mill every day, that's some way around that. So from 3 to 4 weeks, we have significant nutrient loss. The flour may develop a really stale and rancid taste and odor. And then after 1 month, most of the nutrients are degraded. The flavor is very compromised, and there's a major risk of spoilage. So again, think about this and think about how long bags of whole grain flour sit on store shelves, and just wonder if this is what happens, what is actually being done to that whole grain flour in the store. I'm not gonna go on a conspiracy rant, but that's just the fact of the matter. Like, you wouldn't buy bananas that were a month old. They would go bad. They would taste bad. Their nutrients would be compromised. It's the same thing with wheat once it's milled. But it's so beautiful because until it's milled, all the nutrients are completely intact and protected inside that wheat kernel. So it is the perfect storable food. That is why feeling like some long-term food storage with wheat is so amazing. I mean, they have found wheat in pyramids in ancient times, still intact, still completely nutritious. And I just think God knew what he was doing when he created wheat, with the nutrients, with the fact that we could store it for very long periods of time. Now, you do have to be careful about the storage situation. You want it dark and cool, not too humid. We like to use those 5-gallon buckets with the gamma lids. We keep it down in our cool basement. Then I also have some buckets here in my pantry that we go through pretty quickly. So storing it properly is important, but until you mill it, all those nutrients are in there, which is why the concept of freshly milled whole grains is different than just whole grains. And I hope what I shared helped you see that. Now, if you are making the effort to freshly mill flour in your own home and make homemade bread products, you already have in your mind, you want the best quality food that you can get. And this is why the next thing I'm going to talk about, I think, is really important. And that is, I find it so important to buy your wheat berries. That's the wheat grain before it's milled. We call them wheat berries. I don't know why, that's what they're called. But it's so important to buy those organic. Now, I am not too deceived that our organic farming practices are perfect, but they are better than the alternative. So it has been said, or at least from what I've learned, and please, friends, if I say something and you're not sure about, I could be wrong. Go do the research yourself and learn about it. But this is just the stuff that I have in my head that I'm pulling from. But I have heard it said that wheat crops are not Roundup ready, meaning that they haven't genetically modified wheat so that it can be sprayed with glyphosate and other pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and whatnot, that would actually kill the wheat. So there is the messaging that they don't spray on these chemicals on wheat. However, if you talk or do enough research on farming practices, you will find that the ground is pre-sprayed. These huge operations have to do that so that they kill the weeds or get rid of things so that once they plant the wheat, it can thrive. So it's in the soil. I've also heard horrible things that they spray chemicals on it to dry it out after the fact, which means it's like on the wheat. So I don't know what is 100% factual, but I do know that I don't want those chemicals in our bodies. It is hard enough in this world to avoid them, and if homemade freshly milled bread products is the staple of our diet, the majority of our diet, then I want that to be out as much as possible. So I think the most important thing to do when you're sourcing wheat berries, grains, is to get to know the farmer and the farm that you're buying it from. There are a lot of great resources, and I'm going to be doing a whole nother video on like baking supplies, sources where you can get grains and whatnot. So I won't go into that here. But do your research, learn about the farm, learn about their farming practices, ask them questions, like really dive into what they're doing so that when you are like making this bread with so much love and care that you know that there's not some hidden chemicals on there that could actually do more harm than good. So that is my advice for you when you're thinking about transitioning more whole grains, specifically fresh milled flour, into your diet. Make that an important factor. Okay, let's get into some of my personal experience. Now, we actually had a grain mill. We had the Nutri-Mill Harvest Mill, the bamboo ones that are kind of really pretty on the countertop. We've had that for a long time. I want to say like maybe even a decade. So I knew the importance of whole grains for a long time. My mom would cook with them occasionally and talk about them. I've also ran across other sources, and so I wanted a mill, but the thing is, I would rarely use it. I would use it maybe for like muffins on occasion, and it was just random. It wasn't a daily thing by any means. And also, like back in 2020, I joined the sourdough bandwagon. And so in my mind, when with all the messaging going on, I thought sourdough was the healthiest thing to eat. Now, sourdough is amazing. It makes our grains more digestible. It breaks down those carbs and the proteins. So especially if you have problems digesting grains and flour products, sourdough is a great option. I'm still like loving sourdough. I have a sourdough I've nurtured for a very long time, and we use it all the time. However, when I started learning sourdough, I was using white flour. I just thought that was the best thing to do. You get those beautiful sourdough artisan bread with the fluffy holes in it, and it was really fun. But the thing is, I was using white flour with sourdough and thinking that was a better choice. I hadn't really yet experimented with whole grains and sourdough bread when I was learning that, and it wasn't up until about 2 years ago that I went all in with freshly milled flour. Now, if you want my opinion, there is like the king of bread products in my mind, and that is when you can use sourdough, because sourdough is an old, ancient form of making bread, this long fermentation process to make the bread rise. If you can pair sourdough with whole grains, specifically the ancient grains like einkorn, spelt, kamut, emmer, that's a new one I'm actually playing with and loving it. But if you can sourdough ancient grains, freshly milled flour, that's your king of the bread products, okay? That's like the ideal. But you don't always have to shoot for that. There is a lot of good middle ground as well. So especially when you're learning to bake with freshly milled flour and sourdough, take it one step at a time, learn one thing at a time, and just experiment and have fun. But I do often make einkorn sourdough bread, spelt sourdough bread. I have recipes on my blog if you want to do that. I love using hard red wheat, which is more modern wheat, but it's still full and intact with nutrients. I love making sourdough bread with that. That is a little easier than the ancient grains. So definitely check my blog for those recipes if you're ready to just go for like the king of the bread products. But you don't have to go there. There's still a lot of nutritional benefits you can get before you even go all that way. Okay, back to my personal experience. So we've had health issues in my family. They were not really debilitating, but they were concerning. And I was worried about the trajectory that some of my children were on, and my husband and I just noticing concerning things. We didn't really eat the standard American diet, but I still had in my head that bread was bad. Bread made you fat. So when I started to learn about freshly milled flour, it kind of blew my mind, and I was, to be honest, a little scared to dabble into it. A really good resource for you guys that I mentioned in my episode 1 on this series is Sue Becker and her work at Bread Beckers. She often interviews people. She calls them her bread story, or it's the bread stories. So she brings people on that have had positive experiences bringing freshly milled flour into their lives, and she interviews them. You would not believe the testimonies. They're so inspiring to see how bringing real bread into our diets had just transformed people's health. And so that got me curious enough that I was willing to just go all in. I was trying to make fruits and vegetables a huge part of our diet, which is a good thing. But if you have kids, you know that can be kind of difficult for them to get them to eat enough of those to make a difference. Now, I started on a health journey because 20 years ago, when I had my first daughter, she had issues that we really needed to address, and stuff that I saw out of the gates that really concerned me. Now, 20 years ago, we didn't have social media. Blogs were just coming out of the gate, and so I really didn't have a lot of information, and I relied like 100% on the advice from my physicians. And when I had her 20 years ago, it's really concerning, but she came out with, they said there was an infection in her lungs. So before she'd ever had any of my colostrum or my milk, she was put immediately on antibiotics, which I later learned can really compromise the gut lining. And on top of that, the doctor told us I was having a hard time nursing. So 5 days in, the doctor told me, well, babies just do better on formula. So I stopped breastfeeding. So she's had a lot of gut issues, which has displayed in things like severe acne, really bad indigestion problems. So these are all things that I had to try to figure out how to help. And so I just wanted to let you know that that's kind of where my journey started, and has been also one of the like miraculous things that we have seen improve as we've been on this journey. So I just wanted to put that out there so that as I continue talking to you about the benefits of freshly milled flour and what these nutrients can do for our bodies, you have some context about what I'm gonna say. So let's dive into it. I'm really excited to share our personal experience and walk you through why these nutrients do what they do. Hopefully something sparks. But first, I need to share a quick message from today's video sponsor. If you have landed on this video, I know that you care about your health and the health and well-being of those you love. Now, adding bovine colostrum to your diets can be one of those tools in your toolbox that can really help improve your health in a lot of ways. Now, Cowboy Colostrum is a company that has bottled up this superfood powder in this easy to take format. They just dropped their cookies and cream flavor, but you can also check out the other flavors they have on their website. This one is delicious. But let me tell you a little bit more about colostrum and the benefits of adding that to your diet. If you struggle with things like bloating, digestion, and other gut-related issues, everything we were talking about in this video can be supportive for you, including Cowboy Colostrum. Cowboy Colostrum supports your gut, and when your gut is healthy, everything follows. Skin clarity, hair growth, digestion, all of it comes together, and this is a great way to support your gut. And this isn't just my experience. Cowboy Colostrum ran a study, and there are some numbers to back it up. 83% of participants reported improved gut health. 79% experienced less bloating and inflammation. 72% saw improved digestion, and 62% saw fuller, thicker hair. Cowboy colostrum offers the highest quality bovine colostrum available in the US. It's 100% made in America from 100% American grass-fed cows. Unlike other colostrum brands, Cowboy is a true first day whole colostrum, rich in bioactives like immunoglobulins and growth factors. We all know how important colostrum is for a newborn anything, so don't worry, Cowboy actually harvests their colostrum from the surplus after the baby calves have had their fill. Cowboy colostrum isn't processed or stripped down. Their colostrum is whole, full fat, and high in protein for ultimate nutrient density, making it the highest quality bovine colostrum you can buy. There's no artificial flavors, no fillers, just real whole ingredients. I'm actually blown away with how clean the ingredients are on this. Besides the colostrum, there's only these few ingredients. We have organic cocoa powder, organic black cocoa powder, organic Madagascar vanilla powder, and organic monk fruit extract and sea salt. That is so clean and so delicious. I actually feel like I was worried it would have that kind of weird protein powder aftertaste. It doesn't. It literally tastes like a milkshake. It's delicious. It's so easy to mix up. You just add a little scoop to like milk or coconut milk, almond milk, whatever. Even water would be delicious, actually. It's just so thick and yummy. And then you can just mix it up. I love their little Cowboy frothers that you can get. Super handy to just mix it up really easily in a cup, making it super frothy and delicious. Now, not only will Cowboy colostrum bring stability to your gut, the peptides and growth factors will make your skin and hair look amazing. If you want to feel your best this summer, this is one easy daily habit that actually delivers results you can see. You can try the cookies and cream flavor for yourself for a limited time. My viewers get 25% off their order. So you can go to cowboycolostrum.com/keeper, use the code KEEPER at checkout to get that 25% off. I will link that below, or just go ahead and scan this QR code. Again, go to cowboycolostrum.com/keeper and use the code KEEPER to get that 25% off discount and give it a try. Huge thanks to Cowboy Colostrum for sponsoring this video. Okay, so right out of the gate, making the change to baking with freshly milled flour in our home and eating several servings of it a day, right away we noticed an increased amount of energy. And we don't do energy drinks. We don't drink coffee, caffeinated tea. I do indulge in chocolate and of course sugary treats on occasion. But for so many years, I struggled with energy crashes throughout the day, feeling just an overall fatigue, struggling to wake up. And this was a huge, immediate, and drastic change for all of us. It was amazing. So why does bread made from freshly milled flour give us more energy? Let's consider that. And I hope you guys don't mind. I am going to look at my computer so I get some of these facts right. But whole grains contain nutrients, right? We've been talking about this already. The iron, which if you're low iron, you're going to be low energy. B vitamins, magnesium. These nutrients convert food into cellular energy. That's why you get the energy. So if you have a diet, specifically like the American diet, you are going to have calories but inadequate nutrients, and so you'll have an energy deficiency. Also with energy, a lot of foods, well, almost all foods spike our blood sugar. And this is a huge factor for us. I don't know why. There's a lot of diabetes in my family history, so that could be part of it, just something that we struggle with. It could be environmental, I don't know. But managing your blood sugar and keeping like major spikes, trying to avoid those and control those is really important for energy, because when you spike high, then you crash. And the amazing thing with freshly milled flour is that bran that's found in it, whole and intact. There's so much fiber in whole grains. And this will slow your digestion and your glucose absorption. So when you're eating this bread, even though it's giving you a little bit of that energy, it really actually, the fiber stabilizes those spikes and drops, and you get steady energy. Less crashes. Stabilized sugars lead to less cravings, so you don't feel like you need as much like sugar hits to get to the day, or even caffeine. And you can eat way less and have more energy, which is amazing. And another factor of just freshly milling them, you're getting these nutrients fresh, and that's always going to lead to greater benefits. So those are some of the reasons why we notice energy and why it makes sense that freshly milled flour will do that for you. Another thing we noticed was an improvement on our skin and hair health. I actually remember when I dove into it and was like eating the majority of my diet with freshly milled bread products. I went to like a homeschool mom meeting, and one of the moms just looked at me and she said, "Cami, what products do you use? Your skin is glowing." And I just had to laugh because I knew the change. I actually had observed it myself, where my skin usually just seemed a little dull and my hair felt brittle. Those oils were just like nourishing every cell in my body, and you could see the difference. So why? Why does freshly milled flour help with our skin and hair health? So the B vitamins are huge in this. Whole grains provide several B vitamins that are involved in cell growth and maintenance. So your skin and hair follicles are rapidly dividing tissues. And if you don't have enough adequate B vitamin intake, it may struggle to renew those skin and hair follicles and have them be healthy. So the B vitamins really play an important role in that. Also zinc, which you may not have known is helpful for skin and hair. So zinc is found particularly in the bran and the germ, and zinc supports skin barrier function. So zinc can help with like wound healing and normal hair follicle activity. So it kind of helps improve and renew our cells so that they come back healthy and strong. Iron is also important because it delivers oxygen to our tissues. So inadequate iron can be associated with hair shedding. So if you feel like you are just losing so much hair, now keep in mind that we do go through shedding phases in our lives. I'm in one of them right now. But low iron can actually really contribute to slow growing hair and hair falling out. So you may want to check if you're low in iron and see if that may be contributing to that. And then just know that freshly milled flour is so full of iron. Magnesium also comes into play here. It supports hundreds of enzymatic reactions, including those that are involved in cellular metabolism and protein synthesis. So our hair follicles, our skin contains protein, and we need that magnesium to help with that. One thing that I think is just probably the most important is the vitamin E, and other antioxidants are in the bread. So the wheat germ contains vitamin E oil and other antioxidant compounds that help protect cells from oxidative stress. So think of vitamin E as just like this protection over all your little cells. It's just wrapping them in a moist, lubricated bubble, and it helps it to not be so dry, dull, and lifeless. So vitamin E is huge, huge, huge. So many of us are deficient in vitamin E because it's not in our diets, and so this is a really great way to get it. Essential fatty acids. So the germ contains small amounts of unsaturated fats that contribute to overall dietary fat intake and cell membrane health. Protein and amino acids. As you can see, there's so many things in the bread that affect our skin and hair. Hair is largely keratin, which is a protein. And adequate overall protein and essential amino acids are important for maintaining normal hair growth. And also, this is going to play in just about every benefit, but fiber and gut health. So whole grain fiber, which is the bran, right? It supports a healthy gut microbiome and digestion. So these days we hear so much about our gut microbiome because I think most of us live with it being compromised. The gut to skin relationship is important, just like the gut and brain relationship, like what's going on in our guts, the bacteria in there affects our skin and hair and so much more. This is an area of active research, but There are claims that better gut health automatically produce clearer skin, and there is stronger and stronger evidence happening that helps us understand this. So if your gut's healthy, you're going to be able to absorb these nutrients better. If you've got fiber, keeping things moving through in a healthy level, it improves things. So some really, really awesome, important nutrients found in bread that can help us with our skin and hair. But let's dive a little bit deeper even with skin, talking about specific skin issues like eczema or eczema, potato, however you say it, warts or acne. So eczema, which my son had terrible, and it is completely gone. It did take a while once we transitioned to real bread, but it is completely gone. One thing I gotta say about this though, I don't want to claim that bread is the cure for eczema. Bread can actually irritate it. If some people actually have real life allergic reactions to wheat, it can make eczema worse. So you've got to go and do your own research, okay? I'm not a physician, but I do wanna just go over why I think we saw some like massive improvement for my son with his eczema. And it's similar to what we already talked about with skin and hair, but the zinc, the vitamin E, and the other nutrients just keep a healthier skin barrier. So you're gonna get less rashes, irritations, but also the gut support. I hear all the time how closely related gut health is to eczema. So if the gut is inflamed and if the gut lining is compromised and things are leaking out into the bloodstream, eczema is basically like a reaction to this. Your body telling you, hey, pay attention, something's going on inside. So just like we talked about with the skin and health, that fiber and the fact that the whole grains can basically do a fermentation process in our guts, which helps with the good bacteria. That just helps with an overall gut health, which can, again, just improve symptoms that are being displayed through the skin. Also, one thing to consider, especially because our children suffer with eczema so much, if they're eating more whole grain bread, that means they're eating less of the processed junk food. And that overall can just help with the gut health and eczema and other allergic reactions. So that is a possibility. Just when we sub our diet for more nutritious foods, we can see a lot of things just fix themselves solely because we're getting rid of the junk food. But that's probably a tangent for another day. So one thing I find super interesting, if you struggle with warts or you know someone who really struggles with warts, some of the testimonies that have been shared relating to freshly milled whole grain bread and warts amazes me. And you can find these at the Bread Becker's podcast. I think it's called Sue's Healthy Minutes. But she actually brings people on that have these amazing testimonies and stories. And she talks about why bread can help with warts. She actually has a whole podcast called like Wart Stories. So definitely go check that out to really dive deep. It's super interesting. But this is not like scientifically researched. This is more anecdotal. This is people talking about it and being like, wow, this changed our lives. So if there's enough of those, we should start listening up, even though maybe the research hasn't caught up with it. But Sue Becker often talks about how vitamin E is like really the contributing factor for this. And that's because vitamin E is a fat-soluble antioxidant. So when you have enough vitamin E in your skin, you're getting a lot of protection for your cell membranes and the lipids, and it can protect it from the oxidative damage and stress. So one thing to know is that warts are a virus, right? And so you may not think that nutrients will help a virus, but your immune system, it has to recognize and clear the infected skin cells that come with viruses, and that's why vitamin E can really help. So it keeps the surrounding skin moisturized, it supports normal skin repair, and provides that antioxidant protection. So basically, from what I understand, vitamin E isn't like curing the virus, but it's helping the skin cells heal and nourish so that you don't get those warts. Now, we do have personal experience with this. It's not maybe too dramatic, but my oldest daughter and my husband would frequently have warts. We'd have to do little home removal kits often. My husband would try to take care of that himself, but we have not had those. Those are an absolute thing of the past. I don't know if it's as miraculous as the other stories you're gonna hear over on the Sue Becker's podcast, but it feels validating to me that that is just not even a thing we think about. In fact, when I was thinking about what I wanted to share with you, I'm like, do I have experience with that? I'm like, we have not had warts for several years. So that's encouraging and exciting. And I'll try not to be too repetitive here, but acne can also be related to gut health, which the fiber and these nutrients can help with the inflammation. Because of my daughter's experience when she was born and being given antibiotics right away, real bread has helped, but not completely cured. So that is something we're still dealing with. But I'm hopeful that over time, her body will just continue to slowly heal that gut lining and continue to help with this. So, but that can be like, if you have a teenager eating a ton of processed foods, that's really compromising the gut. If you can help replace some of their diet, for a lot of teenagers that don't have like severe cystic acne, it may be the answer. Okay, moving on from skin, let's talk about digestive problems. I am always amazed when I talk to people. So many people are dealing with like chronic constipation or major indigestion, just like overall digestive issues. These are huge. And before we started eating whole grain bread, my oldest daughter, I keep talking about her because again, we've seen the most change with her health because she had the most issues. Poor girl, but I'm just so glad to have found some solution to all these things. But she would get so much pain, especially when she'd eat bread products. So we'd tried gluten-free diets, like we tried it all. If she would like go out to a friend's house, then they'd have pizza and then they'd go and swim. She would be in so much pain. She'd have to call me. Like it just broke my heart. And I am finding that so many people deal with the same problem: indigestion, chronic constipation, bowels not moving, and that means you're not detoxifying. That means toxins are just sitting in your body, besides the fact that you just feel miserable and bloated and gassy. And we're gonna talk about some things here that might make you uncomfortable, but when we're talking about digestion, all these things are so important. And the truth is, like, eating just the endosperm, the carbs and the starchy food that's in white flour, paired with all the processed foods that come from that, we're dealing with a lot of problems in our modern day with digestion. But I love when I bring this bread to people, when I make a loaf of bread from freshly milled flour and I bring that to people, and I love hearing their responses. It's like my favorite thing. But my brother, he's kind of funny. Whenever I bring it to him, he's just thrilled. He calls it his poopy bread because things just start working, right? His daughter often says, if I eat white bread, I'm constipated, but your mom's bread doesn't do that to me. I can eat as much as I want and feel great. Like, that is so encouraging because it's such a huge part of life. We have to keep our digestive system moving at a healthy level for so many reasons. And so this factor alone, I think, impacts people so much. Okay, so why does real bread help our digestive system? Of course, we've already touched on it, but the fiber is huge. Think of the fiber as just like literally fibrous strands that are pulling things out of your body and just moving things through. If you don't have that to pull things out, it gets stuck. So healthy fiber is so good at just keeping it a well-oiled machine, keeping our body detoxifying. And of course, we know that the bran in the freshly milled flour is what contains the most fiber. And we get insoluble fiber and soluble fiber. So it just adds bulk to the stool, keeps you regular, and also supports that beneficial gut bacteria like we've talked about. But something really important as you're eating this real bread, especially if you never have before, stay hydrated, because if you don't have enough water content in your body, it can actually leave you a little dehydrated. So stay adequately hydrated as you're eating this bread, and things will just move on through. Now we know that sourdough bread helps break down the protein and carbohydrates and makes it more easily digestible. But even if you're not sourdoughing your freshly milled flour or fermenting it, your gut actually does some of that for you. So fiber gets fermented inside of our gut, and it produces these short chain fatty acids. These are the compounds that support the gut lining and make a healthy intestinal environment. Now this is why a lot of times people have been told, I can't eat gluten. I'm gluten intolerant. Now some people are full-blown celiac disease, but that's actually more rare than we realize. But so many of us have been told that gluten is bad, avoid gluten. But what's amazing is a lot of these people can actually eat freshly milled flour, especially the ancient grains, like einkorn, spelt, and whatnot. These are so much more easily tolerated in digestive systems that are struggling, and this like transforms people's lives. They're like, I haven't eaten bread in years and I can eat this and I feel good. So if you're one of those people who are just gluten intolerant, baby step your way into experimenting perhaps and see what happens. Now I have to add some caution here. If you've never had freshly milled flour, or if whole grains has been like a very little part of your diet, go into this slowly and carefully. I mean, sometimes we don't do that. I'm an all-in kind of person. So, but I had eaten whole grains before, so it wasn't like my body's never had this and I'm going in. But some people do experience like bloating and gas and some discomfort when they switch to whole grains. And this is some people, I've heard them share this. And that's maybe not necessarily because they're intolerant to it, but they're just getting way more fiber than they used to have. And it's fermenting those carbs in your gut. And so it may cause some initial discomfort if you're just like going all in. So be aware of that fact. I joined Facebook groups about freshly milled flour, and a lot of people talk about that. Like, I did it and I feel miserable. I thought I was supposed to feel better. Like if your gut if this is a foreign thing for your gut, you may need to be a little more careful about introducing it. My mom was really good at always preparing for emergencies, and she would actually get nervous about storing too many whole grains because she had heard that like if you're in an emergency and all you have to eat is these whole grains and you haven't been eating them, it can actually make people pretty sick. And I think she's actually right, but that was a major theory. But the solution to this is just like switch your diet, make whole grains part of your diet every day. That way your food storage is just what you've always been eating. You can rotate it, keep it up to date, and all will be well. I've heard stories of people that were like on antacids and indigestion meds for years and years and years, and they eat freshly milled flour and they can completely go off their meds. So something to consider if that is a problem. Digestion is huge, and freshly milled flour can really help us with that. Moving on, let's talk about our immune systems and how freshly milled flour can help with this. We noticed that we were getting sick way less, especially with little kids. That was a huge thing. So if we would get sick, my kids would get over it very quickly. Also, what happened was, if one person like had the flu in the house, it's almost like guaranteed that everyone else would get it. Well, when we started eating freshly milled flour, I noticed that changing. Like one person would get sick and then it would just be gone from our home. I thought that was just life-changing. So let's talk about why freshly milled flour can support your immune system. Again, it just comes down to the nutrients, which a lot of times our standard American diet does not provide. But zinc specifically helps impair our immune responses. Some people even take zinc supplements, but if you're eating bread, you're getting that zinc. Iron is needed for normal immune cell function. The B vitamins are involved in immune cell production. Vitamin E, my favorite vitamin, is an antioxidant that helps protect cells from that oxidative damage and stress. And then, of course, the fiber and gut health. When you have a healthy intestinal barrier, your immune system is healthier as well. So some really great reasons that freshly milled flour can help you avoid really severe sickness. Another thing, when we started eating this bread, I had way less cravings. I noticed my kids wanted to snack way less, which was very helpful on our budget. The reason for this, of course, goes to the fiber. Fiber adds the bulk and it keeps you fuller longer. So we can make muffins for breakfast, and it's not until like 1 or 2 o'clock until we're all feeling peckish for lunch. Like, it just keeps you fuller for longer. Another reason for that is because it steadies the blood sugar, like we talked about. It's often those blood sugar spikes and crashes that make us feel like we need to eat more. It slows that digestion. So if you like compare, like if my kids have a bowl of cereal in the morning compared to a couple slices of homemade bread with some scrambled eggs, you can just tell that that takes much longer to digest and satisfies them. That's another thing. When you eat this bread, you are nutritionally satisfied. You just don't get those munchies, because your body just says, oh, I have all the nutrients I need. I don't need to look for anything else. I'm good for a while. So that satisfaction is huge. Now, all these things in consideration, eating real bread can help with weight loss. A lot of people have reported that I just eat way less. I move more because I have energy. And those two things in relation to each other often result in some weight loss. I do have to add a cautionary tale. Once you start eating real bread and realize how good it is, be careful, because there is something called too much of a good thing, and you may be eating more than you need to. Now, bread is carbohydrates, and if you have more than you need, they will be stored. So be careful about that. It's not like a weight loss plan, but all these benefits of curbing our cravings can help with weight loss and to give you more energy to work out harder. So those are some things that may be beneficial. Okay, now let's talk about cholesterol. So both my husband and I were actually high on cholesterol, so much so that we were recommended to take meds. But because I had heard that freshly milled flour can help lower bad cholesterol, I decided to give it a try. So that's what we did. So why does bread help with cholesterol? So we're getting a little scientific here. We actually need cholesterol in the body. It's a good thing. But there's the bad cholesterol, which is LDL. If that builds up in the body, that's when we can experience problems, circulatory problems, heart health problems. So here's what I learned. We actually need bile acids to help us digest and absorb healthy fats and nutrients. So our liver makes bile acids. There are these molecules that are made from cholesterol. So soluble fiber, which you've already learned bread contains a lot of, it can help carry the extra bile acids that are building up in the body. They can help carry them out. So then the liver can use more of the cholesterol from the bloodstream rather than just letting it sit there and build up to dangerous levels. So that gives you the potential for the lower LDL cholesterol. Now, eating whole grains, not eating processed foods in itself can help with heart health. But that is why a lot of times you'll see cholesterol, the LDL, bad cholesterol, lowering, because now your body can use it instead of building it up. It's when we eat this real bread, we allow our body to absorb those healthy fats and those other nutrients, allowing our liver to do its job. So, interesting facts. I hope that made sense. Maybe it didn't, but go and look it up and learn for yourself. Some really interesting stuff. Okay, hormone regulation. This was a big thing I noticed. Better cycles, less cramping, especially for my teen girls. When we moved to real bread, we just felt like our cycles were better. we could regulate ourselves better, and here's why. So hormones are so impacted by nutrients. We already talked about the nutrients in the bread, but blood sugar and gut health, they also impact our hormone systems in our body. It's all connected. So it's like when we help one thing, so many other things are helped as well. So support your body with the nutrients it needs, get good health, gut health, and you're gonna see overall better hormone systems and regulation. Something we've definitely noticed with my teen girls in particular, if they eat junk, their cycles are way worse, their cramps are more intense, and so when you can make sure that they're getting a healthy diet, it makes a world of difference as far as how that goes. In fact, my daughter, when she went out on a mission, we knew that she probably wouldn't have access to freshly milled flour, but her cramps got so bad because, they were one thing in the missionary training center, they're feeding the masses, and so it's not always fresh, super great food. But then out on the mission, she doesn't have a ton of time to bake home cooked meals. And she was just starting to feel really sick. So we actually sent her a small grain mill, and she's been milling her own flour and making her own bread, and it has made all the difference. So I have decided every time a kid moves out or leaves the nest, they're getting a grain mill, because even just that little amount of time that she didn't have it, it was really rough for her. Her cycles were worse, her cramps were terrible, so that was really important to get to her. And then finally, are you still hanging with me? This has been a long one, I'm sorry, but I wanted to really go in depth. Overall body inflammation. I talked in my last video how my husband has had a lot of pain that is associated with body inflammation, like back pain, joint pain, plantar fasciitis. These things have really been taken care of. Even though he works hard, he's really hard on his body with all the hard work that he does. And when we're talking about just overall body inflammation, again, the fiber can help with chronic inflammation by moving things out so they don't build up. And then of course, keeping your gut healthy, making sure you have the nutrients you need, it can really lower your body's inflammation, helping you feel better and not be in so much pain. So that is a huge thing that can help a lot of us. Friends, that was a lot of information. Thanks for hanging with me. I hope you've been able to see all the benefits that can come from real bread. Now, I've often thought, can these benefits, these nutrients, be found in some other way? And yes, they can. There are other grains than wheat. If you can give your family a diet of fruits and vegetables, you're also getting nutrients and fiber. However, you're gonna have to eat a lot of it. And this is why I think bread is so amazing, because it's so complete, but it's also so delicious. Like muffins, a warm loaf of bread, pancakes, crackers, all the things that you can make with wheat, your kids are going to eat them. You can make whole wheat cookies. No one's gonna turn that down. I have never met anyone that doesn't like my homemade bread. So the fact that it is such a delicious food that is so comprehensive and complete in the amount of nutrients it gives us, it really is such a staple of life. I don't think it's any surprise that Christ called himself the bread of life. It is sustaining, it is delicious, it is nourishing, it is complete, and it really is the easiest way to get our bodies what they need. Now, we are going to keep going on this little series and talking more about the supplies you need, some bread making hacks. We're gonna keep going, but if you just can't wait and you wanna know, where do I get my meal? Where do I get these supplies? I actually have all of that on a board. I'll link you to it in the description. On my website, there's a bread baking supplies checklist. If you just wanna go all in already and check that out, I'll leave those links for you so that you can get going. But I hope you'll stay tuned as we cover even more about freshly milled flour so that you're ready to make this a huge part of your life. And if this is a new journey for you, try not to get overwhelmed. Start with the basics. That's why I created these cookbooks. They're just simple. They're great for beginners. If you want to learn yeast breads, it's all in one book. And then of course, subscribe so that you know when my quick breads cookbook comes out. I always want to say QuickBooks, quick breads, but just keep it simple. These simple recipes, simple grains, and get started on your journey. I hope it's a fulfilling one for you, and I hope you see so many of these benefits that we have experienced in our lives as well. All right, that wraps it up for today. Thanks for sticking with me, and I'll be back very soon to share more inspiration for the keeper of the home.